Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a shocking development that's sending ripples through Eastern Europe and the Kremlin alike. Moscow's vital land bridge through Belarus has effectively been shut down, and Poland's decision to close all border crossings has left hundreds of trains stranded, creating a major geopolitical and economic crisis. What's happening right now could change the balance of power and logistics across the entire region. For years, the Belarus corridor has served as one of Russia's most important routes to Europe. It's been a lifeline for trade, supplies, and even military movement since the invasion of Ukraine began. This route connected Russia to its European markets and provided Moscow with a crucial backdoor link when many Western countries imposed sanctions. But now, that door has slammed shut. Poland's move to close all crossings with Belarus means that the flow of goods, energy, and critical materials has come to a grinding halt. Hundreds of freight trains carrying everything from industrial parts to oil, coal, and food are now sitting idle at the borders. Rail operators are reporting chaos as containers pile up. Rail networks become congested, and businesses on both sides scramble to figure out how to respond. What seemed like a political warning has now become an economic chokehold, and for Russia, this couldn't have come at a worse time. The closure didn't happen overnight. Tensions between Poland and Belarus have been building for months. Warsaw has accused Minsk of hybrid warfare, using migrants, disinformation, and political pressure to destabilize Europe. Now, by closing the borders completely, Poland is taking one of the most aggressive stances yet against Belarus, and indirectly against Moscow. The message is clear. Europe is tightening its grip, and Russia's reliance on its neighbors is becoming a serious weakness. For Belarus, this is an equally devastating blow. The country has long depended on trade routes through Poland to connect with Western Europe. Now, the shutdown means millions in losses every day as trains and trucks carrying Belarusian exports have nowhere to go. Warehouses are filling up, factories are halting production, and both economies are feeling the squeeze. But politically, Belarus remains stuck between loyalty to Moscow and the economic realities of isolation from the West. Inside Russia, the news has triggered both panic and anger. State media is calling Poland's move a provocation, while Kremlin officials are scrambling to find alternative routes. The problem is, there aren't many. With Ukraine in conflict and the Baltic states closing off Russian access, the land bridge through Belarus was Moscow's last relatively stable connection to Europe. Losing it now exposes just how fragile Russia's logistical and political infrastructure has become. The images coming out of the border are striking rows of train cars stretching for kilometers, rusting under the cold sky, with drivers and railway workers stranded and uncertain. Local reports describe a humanitarian situation developing as people stuck on the trains run out of supplies, fuel, and communication. It's more than an economic disruption. It's a complete standstill of a once bustling corridor of trade and movement. The timing of this couldn't be more crucial. Russia's economy is already under immense pressure from Western sanctions. Energy exports, once Moscow's greatest weapon, are now limited by restrictions and global shifts toward alternative sources. The loss of the Belarus land bridge further cuts Russia off from lucrative markets, making it increasingly reliant on China and other Eastern partners. But that shift eastward brings its own problems: longer routes, higher costs, and dependency on a handful of allies who may not fully trust Moscow's long-term intentions. For Poland, this is more than a border closure. It's a message. The country has positioned itself as one of NATO's front-line defenders against Russian influence. With the war in Ukraine still raging, Poland's government sees tightening control over its eastern borders as both a security measure and a symbolic stand. By shutting down crossings with Belarus, it is effectively isolating one of Russia's key allies and forcing Moscow to reconsider its logistics and influence in the region. The European Union, while cautious, has largely supported Poland's decision. EU leaders have expressed concern over Belarus's role in facilitating Russian movements and supplying logistical support for military operations. Brussels has warned Minsk multiple times about its complicity in the Ukraine war. The new border policy, therefore, acts as a coordinated move, one that's likely been discussed quietly among NATO and EU members for months before being executed. In Moscow, analysts are sounding the alarm. Many experts see this as a major escalation that could force Russia to react in unpredictable ways. There are fears that the Kremlin might attempt to reopen the routes through coercion or even military presence near the Polish-Belarusian border. Others suggest that Russia may retaliate economically, possibly by cutting energy supplies or stepping up cyber operations against Poland and its allies. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain: this event marks a turning point in the regional power struggle. Belarus finds itself in an even tighter corner. Alexander Lukashenko, already under immense international pressure, must now decide whether to double down on his alliance with Moscow or attempt to ease tensions with Europe. But with his country under sanctions and his leadership propped up by Russian financial and military support, the options are limited. Meanwhile, ordinary Belarusians are feeling the pain. With trade routes blocked and goods scarce, inflation is rising, and businesses are struggling to survive. The humanitarian and economic fallout from this shutdown could ripple far beyond the immediate region. Supply chains across Eastern Europe are interlinked, and the sudden freeze is expected to cause shortages in multiple sectors. Agricultural exports, industrial inputs, and even basic goods could see price spikes across the EU. The longer the borders stay closed, the deeper the damage will go. International reaction has been swift. Western countries have largely backed Poland, praising its decisive action against Belarus's aggressive posturing. Moscow, on the other hand, has condemned the move as an act of economic warfare. Russian media outlets have been broadcasting statements accusing Poland of attempting to strangle Russia economically. The rhetoric has grown more heated by the day, raising concerns that this could become another flashpoint in an already volatile region. Meanwhile, Ukraine has quietly welcomed the development. By disrupting Russia's logistics through Belarus, Poland has indirectly helped Ukraine's efforts on the battlefield. Russian supply lines become even more strained, and the transport of military equipment, fuel, and supplies is slowed dramatically. Some analysts believe this could have a direct impact on the pace of the war in the coming months. Inside the Kremlin, there's growing frustration. Russian officials have been holding emergency meetings to find ways to bypass the blockade. Some have proposed rerouting cargo through Kiel, Leningrad, or southern corridors through the Black Sea, but these options are either too costly or logistically difficult. Others have called for closer cooperation with China and Central Asian countries to offset the European losses. But these alternatives can't immediately replace the speed and efficiency of the Belarus-Poland route. The world is watching closely. Global markets have already reacted with increased volatility, especially in the energy and logistics sectors. Investors are worried that this development signals a deeper fragmentation of Europe's trade landscape. The symbolic value of this shutdown is massive. It represents not just a logistical bottleneck, but a growing divide between East and West that's hardening into permanence. For ordinary Russians, this event is another sign that the country's isolation is deepening. Prices are rising, imports are dwindling, and frustration is quietly spreading. Despite government propaganda portraying Russia as self-reliant, the effects of losing such a vital route are impossible to hide. Factories dependent on imported components are halting operations while export-dependent industries face massive backlogs. On the ground, the situation is deteriorating. Videos have surfaced showing long queues of stranded trains, empty stations, and restless workers waiting for orders that never come. Many of these trains are carrying perishable goods, meaning millions in losses every single day. Local railway officials are pleading for emergency solutions, but so far none have materialized. Poland's move, bold as it is, has ignited debates across Europe about the potential risks of further escalation. Some European leaders worry that Moscow could retaliate militarily or with hybrid tactics. However, most agree that showing weakness now would only embolden both Russia and Belarus. This has solidified Poland's position as a key player in the European security architecture. In Minsk, the mood is tense. Belarusian state media is attempting to downplay the crisis, but the reality on the ground tells a different story. Rail workers are being furloughed, and local businesses are panicking as supply chains grind to a halt. The Belarusian government is reportedly in urgent talks with Moscow to seek financial aid to cushion the blow. But Russia, itself under strain, may not have enough to offer. As the hours turn into days and days into weeks, the trains remain motionless. The once busy corridors of trade have fallen silent. The sound of engines and freight cars has been replaced by uncertainty and political tension. The land bridge that once connected Moscow to Europe through Belarus is now a symbol of isolation, division, and geopolitical fallout. This isn't just about logistics. It's about power. It's about the changing world order, where borders are no longer just lines on a map, but tools of influence and control. Poland's decision to shut down all border crossings with Belarus may be one of the most strategic moves of this conflict yet. It's a demonstration of how nations can use economic and logistical pressure instead of military force to shift the balance of power. As this crisis unfolds, one thing is clear: Moscow's grip on Europe is weakening. The once powerful bridge through Belarus is gone, and the trains that carried Moscow's influence westward are now silent. The consequences of this shutdown will echo far beyond rail lines. They'll reshape the geopolitical landscape for years to come. The question now is how Russia will respond. Will Moscow escalate further, risking open confrontation with NATO member states like Poland? Or will it quietly search for new routes, trying to adapt to the tightening noose around its trade and power? Either way, this moment marks a defining chapter in the story of a war that has already changed the world. And as those hundreds of trains sit frozen on the tracks, they stand as a haunting reminder of how quickly power, trade, and influence can vanish. Just like the bridge that once connected Moscow to the West,